So a really valid critique of the whole man methodology is, am I objectifying spaces like Cato Manor in my game of power? Am I using those spaces as props? Am I thoughtlessly, leveraging them in terms of trying to promote myself? And I want to just sit in that for a little bit in this short series of videos, and kind of come at it from a couple different perspectives in order for us to engage on them potentially. The first perspective, which is probably the most valid for me, is that whole man's perspective on South African inequality and global inequality is that actually those places for us as men are incredible opportunities to learn. And that really has been, for the most part, as soon as I kind of became awake as a man, both to my brokenness and my need to transform my masculinity, I ran into spaces of inequality. I actually went and lived there to transform myself from the inside out. And you can read about that in a book I wrote called Normal Life 10 years ago. I mean, and a friend of mine, Zach Kelempini, it was a deep part of my healing has been through reconciling global inequality, and I think it's a real opportunity for men. That's the first thought. I think the second thought about why I'm driving us as men into those spaces is, Desmond Tutu's probably still said it best, is that actually the thing that Africa would export to the world is this idea of Ubuntu. And Ubuntu, for me anyway, is best defined by the term, or the Zulu proverb, which says, Umuntu, Umuntu Abantu, which means a person is a person because of other people. And when the first time I heard that, almost 7 or 8 years ago, I didn't understand it. And so then as a filmmaker artist, I sat in that by taking images, and then in those images meditating and praying on them. And you can see that work in the Instagram page below called Savage. But essentially, as a white privileged man who was born into independence, I was brought up to be extremely independent from a young age, not relying on anyone. I've had to unlearn Western independence and kind of come into essentially attachment theory, which says that actually I need people in order to be a person, which is what that proverb says. In order to be a man, I actually need other men. I'm not an island. And so I've had to unlearn a whole lot. And Africa has taught me that. An African worldview has taught me that. It's been a very challenging process to learn. But in the loneliness crisis, which is really affecting Western young men, there's a lot of information that's being exported from the West, and how to do that. Stoicism is probably one of the best examples of that. And yes, Stoicism is healthy in many ways, and I ascribe to some of it. It's part of the truth. It's not the whole truth. And another part of the truth is this idea of collectivism or Ubuntu or attachment theory that as men we desperately need, and we're not going to find that from a Western perspective. Well, Africa really can be our teacher in this moment. And so another reason for driving into South African inequality is, as men, we get to confront the byproduct of abusive masculinity, which is inequality. And the final reason why it's a good idea to go into spaces like Cato Manor is that those spaces really potentially could be an incredible prophecy of what the world could look like under a dystopian AI future, which is mass inequality, extreme power, and universal basic income, which is basically where South Africa is right now. Most of the population, 60% of the youth are unemployed. Most of the population live on a universal basic income or the grant system. And most of them and have had to fight almost for daily existence, going without meals. It's a really incredible picture of a world where we ignore each other, And I think that is a really good thing, because there's so much to learn. Some of the happiest, healthiest people I know live in the midst of this destructive system, and they had to build a wholeness to survive that. And I want to learn that, firstly, as a man. And secondly, we want to learn from, actually, how do we avoid this future? So that's probably the final reason why I think it's super healthy. I hope those are my thinking in terms of constructing this series, and I hope this video addresses some of that in part. If not, let me know in the comments where you think I missed it or where we can add. Yeah.
Let go and love.